Check.
Good.
Check. Mic check.
Tommy. All right. Cool.
Hearing all those clicks. It's a little known African tongue.
Tommy, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Christopher.
Tommy, you're a great storyteller, and I'd just like to ask you, how did it all start?
Well, I was born at a very early age, as are most people. And I was born in Galveston, Texas, at St. Mary's Hospital. The last member of my family to be born in St. Mary's Hospital. My two younger brothers were born in County Memorial on the mainland. My original hometown is Lamarck, Texas. My grandfather on my father's side left England on a sailing ship when he was 11 years old as a cabin boy and did not return to England until he was 70. He got off a ship in Galveston at the age of 14 and did not return to England, like I said, until he was 70. In between all those times, he became a farmer and worked on different farms. At one point, owned the largest dairy farm in Galveston County. And the Gulf Freeway, Interstate 45 from Houston to Galveston, cut his dairy farm in half. So most of the Corbett's lived on Main Street, which I believe is the 519 cutoff from the interstate. And then on the other side, there's a small subdivision that my grandparents developed, sold lots for $135 to $175 a piece, most of which were bought up by some of my younger uncles. There is one surviving Corbett living on Corbett Street in Lamarck, Texas, my 87-year-old Aunt Ruth. But I grew up primarily in Lamarck. Then when I was 14, I went up to northeast Texas, to Linden, Texas. Lived with my sister and brother-in-law for 1 year, lived with my brother for a year, graduated and came to Austin, Texas, and been here pretty much ever since.
That was 1968, I think you've told me?
Yes, 1968. In the meantime, growing up, I had tons of cousins around, brothers and sisters. As you know, I'm one of 11 kids, but I had all my mom was an only child, so I didn't have any cousins on that side. But on my dad's side, my Uncle Bill, my Uncle Curly, we all grew up within a 1 square mile area. Most of us were farmers. My dad was a welder. When we weren't farming, he welded as a profession. My Uncle Jim was a heavy equipment operator. My Uncle Bill was a builder. My Uncle Curly was a painting contractor. My Uncle Bud worked for any and all of them at various times, but he was a hell of a cabinet maker. So we were all in the trades. And just growing up, we grew up very blue collar. Lamarck is a bedroom community for Lamarck, Texas City area. It's the last few little towns on the mainland before Galveston Island. But it's all petrochemical plants and refineries. If they ever give the world an enema, the hose is going in Lamarck, Texas. Because it smells like the asshole of the world. But it's just, I can think back to my earliest age and remember thinking, I'll be so glad when I'm old enough to escape this area. I did not like growing up there. I have a lot of ties down there to this day, but I never really enjoyed the area. I'm not a beach guy. I'm more of a lakes. I like to be around the lake. If I'm going to be around water, the river, the lake, the beach salt water just makes you feel crappy. The fishing's pretty good, but other than that, I could leave it all behind in a heartbeat. and have. I don't go down there very often. I've got one nephew who lives in League City, which is in that general area. I have one 87-year-old aunt who still lives on Corbett Street. I have one first cousin who lives in Texas City, Texas, which is across the railroad track from Lamarck, and they were our arch rival in sports and stuff. I have three cousins, two that live in Friendswood, one that lives in Dickinson, which are all Galveston County, I believe. Friendswood may be Harris County, but they're all in that area, within 30 miles of the coast. I have three first cousins that one lives in the Austin area, one lives in San Antonio, and one lives in College Station. That's all my first cousins I have left. I used to have a ton of them, but attrition, cancer, various and sundry other reasons. I lost three cousins all within a year of my age, or 2 years of my age. In a 7-month period, I lost 4 cousins.
Damn.
Due to cancer. 1 heart attack, 3 cancers. And it's just, from all the first cousins we used to have, my branch of the family, there's still 8 of us alive. So just with our branch of the family, they each have at least 8 plus all the rest of us. So, I mean, it's just really a strange sensation to go from having a ton of first cousins that I grew up with. I mean, we all played together. We all got in trouble together. We, it was all of that.
Maybe you guys got the good vitamins.
I guess. I don't know. I don't know what happened. The ones that got cancer and died, and the one that died of a heart attack early, they never left the area. And I truly believe that all those chemical plants and all those refineries put something in the environment that shortened the lifespan. Because I have friends I grew up from grade school with, they're telling me the same stories. My dad died at the age of 58. My uncle died at the age of 62. And my dad was 61 when he died, with the exception of 2 brothers. And there were 7 boys and 2 girls in his family. All the brothers died by the time they were 67 years old, except for 2. But they all stayed in that area. They never left the area. And I understand you get your roots dug in. It's like, I can't get away from this. This is where I grew up. And literally, my Uncle Bill lived in the property next door to where their homestead was.
Wow.
He never left. That's how far he got away. He got 1 lot away. And that was it. We got 4 lots away. My grandparents lived here. My Uncle Bill lived here. For a while, my Uncle Bill lived on this side. He sold that house to my oldest brother. Then my Aunt Florence, who's my dad's sister, he lived to be 84, by the way. But she smoked and drank, so I think that's what saved her. And then the Kelsos, how they got in there, I'll never know. And then us. And that was just, at that one time, that all belonged to my grandfather. That was all part of the dairy farm. I can remember my dad telling me that from the time he was about 4 or 5 years old, and my dad had the strongest grip of anybody I've ever known, but they milked by hand 103 dairy cows twice a day. And it was my granddad, my grandmother, my dad, who was 4 or 5 years old, and one hired hand, until more boys were born and came in and could take over part of the chore. But they didn't use milk machines. They did it by hand. My granddad looked like Popeye. He had big-ass forearms. I mean, big forearms. And that's what you use when you're milking cows. And, it was an interesting upbringing, because we worked. We grew our own food, basically. You either worked or you got your butt whipped. It was just that when you were told to go do something, you went and did it. There wasn't any arguing. It's like, okay, you're going to go mow the grass. when you finish eating dinner, okay, you can do the dishes tonight. You can wash and you'll dry. Wasn't any arguing. That's just the way it was, you know. And that's the way my dad grew up. He was the oldest of 9. I'm next to the youngest of 11. So, you know, it's just
big difference in perspective.
A big difference in the deal, but we never lacked. We were poor. I mean, there's no denying that. But we never went without the things we needed. We always had food. When school started, you got 2 new pair of blue jeans, a new pair of tennis shoes, and some new T-shirts. Striped T-shirts, you know, patterned T-shirts. And that's what you started school with. And then as the year progressed, as you needed them, you got the basic minimum. You need a new dress shirt? All right, there's $3 at Wiener's or Sears or JCPenney. And they provided for us. We never went hungry. You know, I mean, and I look back and I go, my dad probably never made more than $7.50, $8 an hour as a union wage. But he supplemented that with a welding shop at the house, and then we grew a lot of our own food. It just the way we were brought up. You didn't waste anything. You know, playmates. You had people you knew at school, and then you had family. And I had plenty of family. I mean, literally all my cousins, all my brothers and sisters, we were all easily within 1 square mile. You know, down the street, across the highway. We used to run back and forth across Interstate 45 all the time to get over to my cousin Arthur. Or one of the cousins that lived over on Corbett Street. I'm going over to Uncle Curly's, haul ass across the highway. You know, do that today, you get your head knocked off. I mean, you're going to get run down. So it was just a different time. Of course, I was in the 50s and 60s too. You know, we weren't as populated and as crazy a world as it appears to be now. So, and it was just Lamarck had a very fine-tuned sense of community. I mean, you had Lamarck, you had Hitchcock, you had Texas City, you had Santa Fe, you had Dickinson, all these little towns within 10 miles of each other. And every one of them had their own identity. And that's the way we liked it. I mean, you could go to Galveston to the beach on the weekend, and you would find your buddies from Lamarck in one little encampment area, and next to them would be the people from Hitchcock. It'd be set up just like it was on the mainland, like Lamarck, Texas City, Hitchcock, Santa Fe, Dickinson. Each one hung with their group, you know. And you knew people from other towns. You weren't so big you didn't know them, but you just didn't hang with them. You know, like I'm from Lamarck, I'm going to hang with the Lamarck group. So that's what you did. So it's pretty interesting. And the older I get and I look back and you realize what a simplistic thing it was that you never considered back in the day. You know, it was like, I'm from Lamarck, I got to hang with Lamarck people. You could be friendly with Texas City and you could be friendly with Hitchcock. And you were probably friendlier with Hitchcock than you were Texas City because they were our arch rivals. And it was just, you know, Galveston was an island. It was off out there by itself. If you went to Galveston, you were looking for trouble. If you were from the mainland.
Really?
I mean, it was, you know, you go over there to stir up a bunch of shit. Not worry about it. Although that's where the county sheriff's office was Galveston Island. There used to be a big cemetery on Broadway in downtown Galveston. And they had this World War II memorial to somebody. And it had a 30 or 50 caliber machine gun on it. And of course it was disabled. But we used to go down there and steal that for the night and get in the trunk of a car and drive around Galveston and flip the trunk lid up, get around a bunch of kids on the sidewalk and throw firecrackers, a string of firecrackers lit up. You know, going off, sound like a machine gun. Crazy shit like that. I never thought twice about what kind of trouble we would get in. Desecration of a grave, theft. They could get us for 15 different charges. We figured out at one point, I think. Underage drinking, but you don't think about those things. And in those days, you could do it, and even if you got caught, you still kind of got away with it, because basically it was like, we got to call your folks. All right. So it was crazy, but you had backup. I mean, it was like, if I got in trouble, I'd go get one of my older brothers, or my cousin, or my Uncle Bill. He was always good to get you out. You call my Uncle Bill. You get stopped by the police, and everybody knew everybody, but they all knew my dad was Sam. But you go, all right, who's your parents? We got to call them. William Corbett on Main Street, WR. He's only got the one boy, right? No. You're thinking of Sam, our dad. Well, they knew we were lying, but they would call my Uncle Bill anyway, and he'd come get us out of trouble. I'm not going to lie to your dad, but if anybody asks, I'll cover for you. But I'm not going to lie to your dad. Okay. But it would just blow over because everybody knew who was who, and they know, like, we're probably going to end up in trouble over something else anyway. We got in a fight one night. It was kind of a little semi-gang fight. One of my brothers got beat up, gets back to the house with a black eye and a busted lip. What happened? All these guys over to Robinson Stadium, which was a semi-pro baseball field in Texas City, jumped him. Him and another friend of his. That shit ain't gonna fly. So, load up all of us that's around. Back we go. Picked up a couple other buddies. A guy named Charlie Ryan, George Green, Jackie Clifford. We're over there. We're in the center field of Robinson Stadium. Big fight breaks out. Screaming, hollering. You hear somebody whose house backs up to the ballpark. I'm calling the cops. Everybody hauls ass. Well, Charlie Ryan had gotten a Zippo lighter with this little $3 silver Zippos. They were famous for not going out in the wind or something. I don't know. And his girlfriend had given it to him and engraved given it to him for his birthday, and engraved some kind of special little saying on it. Well, he's like, I gotta go find my lighter. I lost it out there in that field. Charlie, we're going to get arrested if we go back over there. Well, Robinson Field's in Texas City. So anyway, we go back. There's like 9 of us crawling around in the center field looking for a fucking cigarette lighter that's this big. We find it, but the police get there before we're gone. So we go to Texas City Police Station. I'll never forget, this booking sergeant's name was Lewis Welch. He's about my dad's age. I think I was 13. So he's got us all in a jail cell. All right, I got to call your parents. Who's your daddy? WR. You sure you're WR's boys? Yes, sir. WR Corbett's our dad. Well, he knew we were lying, so he called my dad. Turns out Lewis Welch and my dad went to school together. So he knew the story. My dad came and picked us up. It was hell to pay over that one. Yeah, well, but that's just the way I grew up down there. I mean, everybody looked out for each other, especially in the family. You hear it's kind of like a mafia story. You don't go against the family, which you don't. In my family, you don't go against the family. I mean, you do what's right. And if they're out there doing something wrong, then you have a talk with them about it. Say, I can't support you on this. But if you're just, like when I was growing up, we were mischievous. We weren't really troublemakers. We got in trouble, but it was mischief more than anything else. We would do shit like Halloween. There were 2 or 3 streets, Oak Lawn, a couple other streets that they ran for about 3/4 of a mile. Scott, Oak Lawn, and they all had these little concrete yard markers with your address on them, like 2614, 2616, 2620, 2802, 2804, so you'd know what house was which. And they were about 15, 18 inches long, about 6 inches tall, about 3 inches thick, and it had the number on both sides of it. So you could, if you were going along looking, you could see what yard was what. We'd go on Halloween and we'd take like 2602 and take it to the other end of the street on the opposite side to maybe 3104, which was completely diagonally opposite. The only ones that came out even close were the ones right in the middle of the block, and they just moved across the street from each other. We'd do shit like that on Halloween, and it would take them months to realize it. And then it would make the paper. Well, vandals struck the yard markers again, or the address markers, and that was our big event, There's just no replacing growing up like that. You can't do that today.
No.
You cannot do that today because you're going to jail. Somebody's going to get their panties in a wad, and they're sending you to jail.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. And we never thought about the consequences because there really were none. You might get your ass whipped. You might get grounded. My dad wasn't a big believer in grounding. He'd get that leather strap off the wall and wear your ass out for a few minutes.
Ooh.
You were done. Okay, I done my penance. To him, grounding was, you're not going out tonight. Wasn't like you're grounded for 2 weeks. No, you're not going out tonight. But Dad, no, there ain't no but Dad. You're done. You didn't even have to waste your breath with, but Dad, I promise. You're not going, that's it.
Was Mom a little bit easier?
Yeah, Mom didn't. My mom, to her, she hated to discipline you, but she would. When we were little, you remember those old, I guess I ought to quit moving away from this, huh? The little rubber ball with a rubber band on a paddle board, boom, boom, boom. She had one of those paddles. She called that her effing board. Because if and you don't behave yourself, I'm going to put this board on your ass. And she would. My mom was a big believer in do what I say and when there's no problem. She'd make you go get your own switch, which you'd go find one that would look like a string, just drooping down. I can't do anything with this. Go get me a switch that works. So then you'd go find a fence post, drag it back. I can't do it. By the time you got the right one, you got your ass whipped. She was mad. Or she'd make you take your own belt off and use your own belt.
Ooh.
And she had a backhand from hell. You could be arguing about something and pow! What the hell? She tired of listening, boom, that was it. But you very seldom ever did it. You really had to push some buttons to get my mom mad enough to physically discipline you. Mm-hmm. My dad, not so much. My dad, there's like a year to 2 years between the 6 older boys. There's about 3 years between me and my brother that was right over me. And you kind of ran your group as my oldest brother, my next oldest brother, a set of twin boys, my brother Garrett, who was a twin with a girl, me, and then my 2 younger brothers were twins, but they're 5 years younger than I am. So Garrett and I were kind of paired together all through our lives. And it was like the 6 older boys especially, we got whipped with great regularity. My dad had a leather strap, the piece of harness leather, about that thick, about that wide, about that thick, and about not quite 5 feet long, but he folded it double. And he whipped your ass with it. And you knew when you had the lineup, you were going to get your butt whipped. Because it would go like this, like, all right, who did it? Who did what, Daddy? Don't give me that horse shit. Whoever did it knows what I'm talking about. So you go, did I do something I was not supposed to? No. Did I not do something I was supposed to? No. Did any of these other son of a bitches do something they weren't supposed to? And if they did, should I tell on them and take a chance of getting whipped for being a tattletale? or keep my mouth shut and take a chance I'll get whipped for not telling when he asked. So you were on the dilemma all along, but you knew at that point you were going to get your butt whipped. So you started jockeying for a position. You either wanted to be number 1 or number 6. Those were the ideal slots. Number 1, he wasn't limbered up. Number 2, he was starting to get there. Numbers 3 and 4, you got your ass whipped. Number 5 and 6, number 5 he was wearing down, and number 6 he was tired. So 1 or 6 was optimum. But my dad used that strap so much he hung it on the nail beside the kitchen door. But after he had been dead several years, my 2 younger brothers and I were in East Texas cleaning out an old storage shed my mother had. And I found that leather strap. And it was folded over, stuck down in a box. And we were going through this shit like burn barrel, baby mama wants to keep it. Burn barrel, which you'd throw off in a 55-gallon drum and let it burn. Man, I pulled that thing out, and Steven started my 2 younger brothers. They didn't get whipped with it near as much as us 6 older boys did. I said, this son of a bitch is going in the burn barrel. I threw it out in the yard, outside the door of this little storage shed, and it had the crease was so permanent from where it had been folded and used so much, it folded up by itself. I said, that motherfucker is definitely going in the burn barrel. You know, it's still alive. We're taking all the life out of this one. And it was crazy, you know. But we never thought, if parents were to whip their kids today, like my dad whipped us, my dad would still be doing penitentiary time. You know, child abuse.
Yep.
We turned out okay, basically. You know, get a welt on your butt here and there. And that's one thing I'll say. He pretty much confined it to your ass. He didn't go around believing he'd whipping your back or the back of your legs. He tried to hit your butt as much as he could. Of course, when you're dancing around, oh, daddy, oh, daddy, oh, daddy, you know, sometimes the aim gets a little off, but it just, but growing up like that, you know, thinking back, it's like, wow, nobody could do that today and not go to jail. It just wouldn't be done. It probably CPS would come and take your kids away from you. Truth be known. But we weren't the only kids that got whipped. Everybody I knew got whipped. You know, none of this. I'm going to give you a spanking. There wasn't no spanking. It was ass whipping. You know, to hell with a spanking. That doesn't do any good. I want you to remember this. You're not going to do that again. No, well, I'm not going to get caught doing it again. Oh, man. It's crazy. And the thing was, when my dad started whipping asses, didn't matter whether you were his kid or not. If you were at the house when the deed was done, you got your little ass whipped unless you got out of there before he got to you.
Oh, wow.
My cousin Jimmy and Herbie, they lived 2 doors down. My Aunt Florence, who was my dad's sister, used to tell him, Sammy, I don't want you whipping my boys. They said, well, then don't send your boys to my house, because if they get in trouble with my boys, they're getting their asses whipped. My sister didn't get whipped like that, just us boys.
Okay.
So it's like, if they're over there messing up with my boys, they're going to get their asses whipped. Well, my Uncle Jimmy, who had married into the family, he was an electrician. He was like, Sammy, do whatever you got to do to them, you know, straighten their ass out. Because he wouldn't whip them again when they got home, because they knew my dad whipped her ass, and he knows my dad could give an ass whipping.
So how were the girls disciplined?
Basically, they had to go to their room and stay back there. They as far as grounding went, they had a lot more social activities than the boys did, more or less. So you're not going to that.
Oh, so it was.
Yeah, it was kind of a grounding, but pretty much, you know. And my dad's finger was like a piece of rebar. He'd hit you on that chest right there. Let me tell you, Buster Brown, because there were some Buster Brown kid shoes out in those days. And I mean, you know, you could. It's like he was stabbing you. And I guess it's from all those years of milking.
Yeah.
But I'm serious. My dad could probably grip that marble and leave his handprints in it. That's how strong his grip was. My dad was physically the toughest man I've ever known in my life. John Wayne in the movies, he ain't got shit on my old dad. My dad was, I saw him get cut with a knife 3 times and still whipped the man's eye and nearly kill him.
So he was a scrapper.
Turned him over on a gurney before they put him in the ambulance. When I was in college, I'd go out between the break between semesters. You'd have like 3.5 weeks. And I'd go out on offshore oil rigs. My dad would drag up whatever job he was on, and we'd go offshore. And in those days, they would put a drilling platform out there, and then you would build a derrick in place. Instead of now, they build it on land, float it out, stand it up. But I would go out as a helper, and I'd be making $8, $9 an hour, and everything over 8 hours a day was double time. And I could work 16, 17 hours a day. My dad and my brother, my dad would go out as a welder, and my brother Dickie was a welder. They would hire on, and I would go on as their helper. So I had plenty of work to do. But we went out one time. We worked for Gates Welding out of Arcadia, Texas, which is down there on the coast. And they would drive you you would go to Gates Yard in Arcadia, which was about, I think, 11 miles from Lamarck, and leave your vehicle, and they would put you on a company truck, drive you to the port in Galveston, put you on a helicopter, fly you out to the rig. And then you were out there for 4 days and 3 nights, or four nights and 3 days, however it worked out. And I mean, it was just like living in a hotel. Beds were changed every day, great meals, all free, but you just worked. And there was one trip we went out, and there's this guy that my dad, for some reason, my dad and this guy were just boom, boom, bumping heads the whole time. There's another welder on the rig, and we couldn't understand why they couldn't get along for a week, till you at least fly back in and go back out with a different crew or something. Somehow it didn't work. So they picked us up, and we got back into Arcadia. Well, the truck they drove us from Galveston to Arcadia on had an aluminum camper shell on the back that you could see out the back of it. And there was a bench down the side, and a little 2-man bench across the back window. So, I mean, every seat would be taken for the crew, Well, my brother and I were against the back glass. My dad was the last man on that end. This guy he argued with for a week was across the deal from him. And on the ride back, a 20-minute ride back up to Arcadia. I'm like, God damn, can you shut up? Well, you start getting off. Of course, everybody's bent over trying to get out of this cover. And all of a sudden, I hear my dad go, "You son of a bitch." Of course, everybody stopped because my dad and this other guy were the first guy off. Guy had taken, those big case pocket knives, folded clothes are that long.
Oh, yeah.
He had one of those, and he sliced my dad across the back. When my dad stepped down on the parking lot, 80-some-odd stitches in my dad's back. My dad turned around when he said, "You son of a bitch," and the guy was swinging down to get his face. He clipped his nose and his cheek. My dad threw his hand up. He cut the side of his hand. Then my dad got a grip on him. Got him down, took that pocket knife away, stabbed it in the oil shell. They use oyster shells down there for parking. Broke the blade off in it and kept the base part of that knife in his fist.
Like a brass knuckle.
And beat the shit out of this man. Cussing him the whole time. "You son of a bitch. You cut me, you better kill me." Wham. Knock him down, stomp on his head. I've never seen my old man go berserk. He was pissed. Well, the guy on the Gates welding truck had a 2-way radio. He's going, "I need a sheriff and I need an ambulance." Well, about the same time, Joe Max Taylor, who was the chief deputy for Galveston County Sheriff, J.B. Klein was the sheriff, and they were all good friends with my dad. And Joe Max was the chief deputy. Here comes the sheriff's department car about the same time the ambulance gets there. And this guy is laying in the parking lot. We finally got my dad to quit stomping on him. And you couldn't recognize his face. I mean, my dad beat the shit out of this man. And the ambulance people showed up. They threw him on the gurney. They're wheeling him over to the back of the ambulance. And my dad goes, "Fuck him, you're taking me first." Turned it over, hopped up on that gurney, and Joe Max Taylor, if he hadn't been there, that's the way it would have been. He goes, "Sam, you can't do that." So that man's about to die. My dad said, "The son of a bitch deserves to die." And of course, everybody said, "Yeah, he cut Sam," and blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? We had 12 witnesses standing right there. Joe Max said, "Sam, get in the sheriff's car. I'm going to take you to the hospital myself. It's quicker." So got my dad in the sheriff's car, hauled his ass over to County Memorial Hospital. Meanwhile, they get this guy back up out of the dirt on the gurney. Sure enough, they didn't get there till after the sheriff's department car. But my dad had 80-some-odd stitches in his back, 30-some-odd stitches in his hand, 9 stitches across his face. It's 2 days before he calmed down enough where he could talk like a normal person. That son of a bitch, if I ever see him again. And he lectured this guy. He had hit him. Boom. His head was just, I mean, imagine every slow motion Muhammad Ali knockout you've ever seen, where those heads will go. That's the way it looked. "You son of a bitch, you ever see me coming, you better not only cross the street, but you better cross the street and go the other fucking direction." Bam! Stomp, 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 pick him up, do it again. And me and my brother couldn't get out there fast enough because we had all these guys in front of us that just stopped when everything started, you know. Finally, my brother, who's a little bit bigger than I was in those days, he said, "Come on, shove, man." So we just started pushing. We was pushing people down there back. Hey. We're like, "Get the fuck out of the way. It's my old man that's getting cut up," you know. Because we couldn't tell what was going on because we were in the back of the bunch. "Oh, we didn't realize that y'all were in the deal, you know." Then we had to go home and tell my mom, would go, "What's going on?" "Yeah, Daddy's at the hospital." "What?" "Yeah, the guy tried to knife him to death when we got out of the truck."
Did you ever find out what started it?
No, just yammering back and forth for a week. And the guy just got tired of listening to my dad telling him how right he was. Because he thought he was right. You know, just a schoolyard spat.
Yeah.
It started on my old man was a case. I worked with him through his union some summers. And my dad was a pipe fitter welder. And pipe fitters and boiler makers, although they do basically the same trade, they are mortal enemies. Don't ask me why. But we were building this what they call a gas cracking unit, where they run gas through and filter it and do all kinds of stuff. And it was going up about 60 feet in the air. Well, you had to build scaffolding all around it. Well, the boiler makers were bolting shit onto the side of it. We were bringing pipe up the side of it, so we were coming behind them. And then we had this one guy, fairly young guy. He was always dropping, I don't know if you've ever seen these damn bolts. Hell, the bolts is big around as that microphone. They're big. Well, the nut weighs a half a pound to a pound that you put on there. Well, these guys would drop it, never say anything. Well, you're working on a catwalk, 40 feet in the air, bam! Oh, you could jump off and hurt yourself bad, This one guy thought it was funny as shit every time he'd knock a nut loose or bolt loose, and it'd fall down there and scare whoever was working beneath him. My dad went up there one time. He said, "You let it happen one more time, and I'm going to throw your ass off of this tower." Went back down. And we could hear the guys talking because they were only about floor to ceiling above us. Yeah, I'd like to see that old fucker come up here and do that. Blah, 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 blah. Well, tables got turned and we got above them. They were about 12 feet below us. What they call a little shop maul, which is a little 4-pound sledgehammer. I mean, it looks like a sledgehammer, but only weighs 4 pounds. My dad goes, "It's our turn." What? Now, you got hard hats and shit like that on. He waited till the guy gets almost right under us, and he dropped it to where it would miss him. He knew it would miss him. But you talk about a noise, man, it blam, bam, bam, bouncing all over down there, and this guy nearly jumped off of the side of that damn tower. And we were about 60 feet in the air. And the guy was famous for knocking shit off, and then after it made all the noise, scared the shit out of you. Heads up, you know. They thought it was funny. So my dad pulled that trick on him. Heads up, you son of a bitch. My dad says, "You want to come up here, or do I need to come down there so you can whip this old man's ass?" Next day, the guy wasn't on the job. He drug up and was gone. Like, I ain't messing with that old man. My dad was tough. He was tough. He was a piece of work.
So surely he had a loving side.
Oh yeah, he was. You know, as long as you did what you were supposed to do, it wasn't none of this. "Oh, come here, let me give you a big hug," kind of crap. No, that didn't. He didn't ever do that. But you knew he cared about you. You know, I mean, another good one. I was in the 9th grade, and this guy who was a senior at the school, I'd gone to school with his sister all through school, Mike Jasinski. Mike and a guy named Bobby Hawking and a couple other people. We were in choir, and the choir teacher left. I had to go to some kind of a conference. And so he left Mike and Bobby and Cookie Gilchrist in charge of the class. Well, the choir building and the band buildings were out away from the main part of the high school. And they had their own little drink machine and snack machine and stuff. So it was just basically a study hall. So Bobby and Mike went out to the little vending machine and got a Coke and a cupcake. Came back in and were eating it. Well, me and a couple of my 9th grade buddies decided, well, shit, if they can do it, we can too. You know, it's a quarters. You go out there, drop a quarter in, dime for a Coke. They're like, "Where are you going?" They were going out here to get a snack. "You can't do that." "You did. You can't do that. Try to stop me." We went out there. Well, they come back. Well, they ratted us out to Mr. Gilbert. We ratted them out to Mr. Gilbert, the choir teacher. We go to the vice principal's office. The vice principal, whose daughter I'd gone to school with since 1st grade. And I told Mike, I said, a little family history. My oldest sister graduated with honors. My next oldest sister graduated with honors. My oldest brother graduated. He was a star athlete. My brother Dickie quit school, went to prison. My other 2 brothers, Ronnie and Donnie, quit school, went in the service. My brother Garrett quit school, went in the service. My brother Janie quit school. I'm going to school. I'm making straight A's. I'm a decent athlete. But I got treated like a little piece of shit because of what my older brothers and sisters ahead of me did. Mm. So if any time there was trouble, if I was involved, whether I was in the right or I was in the wrong, I was in the wrong. Mm-hmm. So Mike, he gets, somehow or another gets twisted around. And I told him, I said, "I'm going to whip your ass after school. We can't fight on school grounds, but I'll meet you outside." Now, this is a guy who's 3 years older than I am. He went to the vice principal's office, Mr. Llewellyn. They called his dad. His dad came and picked him up, walked him from the assistant principal's office out to the car, and they drove off. I get called to the office the next morning. Troublemaking. This is when I went to East Texas. I said, no, I said, I explained the situation. I said, what's right for them wasn't right for us. Well, all I've got your word for it. And I said, I've got other witnesses. You know, call Mike Hall in here, call Hank Ryder in here. They'll tell you what would happen. Well, I'm just going to suspend you for 3 days, and we're going to leave it at that. I said, okay. I said, but you have no say of what goes on away from the school grounds, right? No, I said, I'm going to whip his ass. Well, the next day when my dad found out I was suspended for 3 days, that didn't fly. My dad took me to school the next day, which meant he was late for work. He says, Jimmy, James Llewellyn was the assistant principal's name. He said, I'm going to tell you right now, this boy is the hope for my family. He's got brains. He's a decent athlete. He's coming to school today and for the rest of the year. And there won't be any more trouble. So you may as well take that expelled out of your book because he'll be in class today. Okay, Sam, but you realize if he gets in any kind of trouble, there's not going to be any trouble. I'm telling you right now. Okay. I think that was on a Friday. That was on a Thursday. Well, the local Elks Club would have these dances, and my brother Sam's band would play them all the time. So Sam's band was playing a Friday night dance at the Elks Club. So me and my cousin Jimmy, my cousin Butch, my cousin Junie, and me, our friend Harry Monich, we all load up like we did every weekend. We go to the Elks Club dance. My cousin Jimmy comes over and he goes, guess who's over in the corner? I said, who? Mike Jasinski.
Uh-oh.
Perfect. I go over there and said, I'm whipping your ass tonight. He got a little panic-stricken look. And they would have a local policeman chaperone these dances. The guy's name was Alan Stutters. He went to school with my oldest sister, graduated with my oldest sister. And we were about the same size. And he came and got me off the dance floor and said, you got a phone call. What do you mean, Alan? He said, I think it's your old man. I said, if this is some kind of trick for Mike Jasinski to get to his car before I whip his ass, I'm going to whip your ass. He said, I think it's your old man. So I go get on the phone, it's my old man. What's this horse shit with this Jasinski boy? Nothing. Don't give me that. What's going on? I explained the situation to him. I said, I just told him I'm going to whip your ass for you. Get away from here tonight. He said, well, he went and told the police. He went and told Stutters. Stutters called Walter Feigl about what to do because Walter Feigl was the chief of police, lived across the street from us. So he called my dad and said, hey, this is what's going on.
You guys didn't need iPhones back then, huh?
Oh, no, hell no. Especially in a small town. There's only 5,000 people in town. And he said, I think you better come home. And it was within walking distance. I mean, it was less than half a mile to my house. So I told my cousins, I said, I got to go. Oh, we're not ready yet. I said, no, I got to go. Daddy called me. I got to go home. Well, we'll take you. I said, no. My cousin Butch, like, you want me to whip his ass? I said, no, I want you to just stay out of it. Because Butch had already graduated. So I walked home. My dad said, Monday evening after work, we're going down to sit down with this Jasinski boy and his daddy. Okay. Said, don't make any after-school plans. Spend the rest of the weekend doing shit around the house. Monday rolls around, my dad gets off work. My dad had an old 54 Studebaker pickup work truck. Tank. I mean, it was like a tank. And we lived on one end of Main Street. You had to go all the way to the other end of Main Street into a kind of a high-dollar neighborhood. Well, Mr. Jasinski was a white-collar worker at Texas City Refinery, where my dad worked as a blue-collar worker. And So we go down there. It's about 5:30. Ring the doorbell. Go in, sit down. Janice, who's my age, and Mrs. Jasinski are gone. They gone shopping or gone to dinner or whatever. So Mr. Jasinski's like, well, and I know what happened in the meantime is there was a drive-in called Leo's that was right across from the high school. I caught Mike there and walked up on him and knocked him on his ass. And he ran back over to the school ground, so I couldn't touch him anymore. And but they would go over there before school and after school and smoke behind the building. Because they didn't want their parents to drive by and see them, so they'd smoke behind the building. So Mr. Jasinski opens a conversation with, because it was on a Thursday when everything went down. It's Friday morning when I had my brother drop me off. I saw Mike behind Leo's. He said, so Tommy, he said, how is it you had to jump my boy at school the other day? I said, jump? I said, he didn't tell you the right story. He said, what do you mean? I said, you know where Leo's Drive-In is on the corner of Scott and Laurel, or Bio, yeah. I said, well, James and David Condell and a few other of the guys that smoked were behind the building smoking a cigarette. And we pulled up at the stop sign. I saw him over there. I got out, walked across the parking lot carrying an armful of books, and he saw me walking that whole way. It had to be at least 150 yards. And before he could put his cigarette out and get away, I knocked him on his butt. Boy, old Mike was just white. He said, well, yeah, it's a little different story than what I heard. I said, well, that's the story, and I've got witnesses to back it up. He said, well, there's never anything to be gained from violence by doing all of this, blah, 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 blah. He gave me a little 5-minute lecture about how fighting's not going to solve anything. He said, don't you think so, Sam? And my dad was like, well, and Mr. Jasinski's name was Mike, too. He said, well, Mike, he said, let me tell you, he said, I've been in a lot of jobs, a lot of places where we had some guys that went and tattletaled on people, and once they had their ass whipped once or twice, that kind of quit. And Mr. Jasinski was like, oh, I'm not getting anywhere here. So we talked for a few more minutes. Said, hopefully we can get this worked out. I said, as far as I'm concerned, it's worked out. So we're leaving. They're standing at the front door. We walk out. Mr. Jasinski sticks his hand out. Nice to finally meet you. I know you went to school with Janice all these years, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, good to meet you. Shook my dad's hand. Mike was standing there. He shook my dad's hand, stuck his hands out to me, and he said, no hard feelings. I just looked at him. Walked on by. My dad went, go shake his hand. I went, Daddy, I don't want to shake his hand. Go shake his hand. I went back and shook his hand. We went out, got in the truck. I put the key in the ignition. My dad's sitting over on the passenger side, and he goes, if that little son of a bitch so much as says hello to you, knock him on his ass. Or you whip his ass. Thank you, Daddy. So, yeah, there was a loving side to it. You just whip his ass. That was pretty funny. That's one of many tales in my life.
How much more you got in you today? We've been going about an hour.
I think I'm pretty well wrapping up.
All right.
I can feel it in my throat.